sure about sports medicine. I asked who he's doing. Arguing about this, I assume it's the sports medicine or the one who proves it, puts back the race car drivers. Put them all back together. So, I asked him if he's there now. I mean, are you there now? Can you be visited today? How long in the hospital? I just don't fix it. I'll do that.
Good deal. All right.
I just drew one of those a few weeks ago, if you want to see.
I got a picture of one with me in it. If you want to see.
All right, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Nixon.
Good morning. All right, we are continuing in that light, sunny book called Ecclesiastes. Actually, one thing I want to focus on or talk a little bit about today. I was trying to look at we're going to look at chapters 3 and 4 in Ecclesiastes today, and I'm not seeing a lot of gloom and doom in there that I used to think is there, or that a lot of people think is there. I mean, it's realistic. It doesn't sugarcoat things, but it's not. What's the word I want? To me, a lot of it kind of precedes some of the things we see in the New Testament that Jesus might mention, or that Paul talks about. So we'll see how it goes. Ecclesiastes 3 and 4. If I can find it. You'd think I would know where it is by now.
It's on page 1000.
Thank you. Okay, there it is. All right. I'm not going to read the whole thing here to start with. We'll pick out some verses and things as we go along. But the start of chapter 3, the first 8 verses, of course, very, very familiar to, I think, most of us. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot, kill, heal, tear down, build, weep, laugh, mourn, dance, scatter stones, gather stones, embrace, refrain from embracing, search, give up, keep, throw away, tear, mend, be silent, speak, love, hate, war and peace. That pretty much covers a lot of everything that we go through in life. But a few words in here, you kind of think about it when in verse 3, where Solomon says there's a time to kill and a time to heal. Kill. There's a time to kill. And if you look at the original Hebrew, the word used here for kill is it's different than the word used for kill, say, in the Ten Commandments. The Hebrew in the Ten Commandments, it refers more specifically to murder, a premeditated act of killing some other person. The word used here is a different word, which can mean murder, but it also can mean to kill somebody or to kill something. And that's the other kind. It's kind of ambiguous. Is Solomon saying a time to kill other people, or to kill a sacrificial animal, to kill a chicken for Sunday dinner, or what? It's kind of open to interpretation. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what he means. Time to dance. There were a few commentators I ran across that just were against dancing in any form whatsoever. So, maybe he's metaphorically he's dancing. He's not actually dancing. Maybe that's how we can look at that. It depends on your personal theology, I guess. But but overall, what this all is, this is life. It kind of mirrors, there's good things and there's bad things throughout this list, but does that not just kind of mirror a lot of times what Jesus would say to us, or what Paul would say, that there are it's not going to be easy. Your life is not going to be easy necessarily. There's going to be bad things happen, and maybe we don't like to hear that, but that's just the reality. So it's, I don't know that it's a bad thing that we Solomon says, well, here's what's going to happen. And everything is going to happen at some point, and it won't be easy. It won't be pleasant. Some of it will be nice. Some of it will be joyful. But it's just not always going to be a great time. And we're reminded of Paul in Romans chapter 8. And he says, we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. We talk often about, maybe God doesn't cause bad things to happen, but he can make good things happen out of what happens to us. So to me, this is kind of the same thing. There are bad things going to happen, but if you're, if you've been called and you are a believer, then good things can come of whatever's coming your way. So I don't know. To me, it's the same. It's saying the same thing, maybe in a more poetic kind of way. But through all these things, somebody didn't like what I was saying.
There's a time to answer.
Disagree.
Yeah.
There's a time
And a time to
to
silence.
hang
I
up.
have to refrain from
Can we make our own list?
Feel free to make your own list. But through all there's a lot of stuff here. Is this stuff we're supposed to just passively let happen, or is this more of a command to actually try and make things happen?
Yes.
Who invited you? No.
I think Jeff and Nancy.
No. You think either? It could be both.
Yeah.
It depends on what time it is. So, and I would agree. I think I would agree with that. That does this kind of call in that vein? Does that kind of call on us to kind of be aware of what's going on in our lives, what's going on with other people, to understand the implications of things, to be discerning in some way. So if you've got a friend who's going through something, maybe you can help them understand, you need to do this, this, and this, or maybe you just need to wait on God to get back to today's sermon, which ties right into this. There's a time for everything, but whose time is it? That's a time for everything. It's God's time for all of these things. So maybe it's passive, and maybe there's a time that we need to be able to see that we need to be doing something. Kevin?
So is he saying in here that a wise person would recognize that there is a season of life and different things happen in different seasons and you can't change the seasons? Is that what he's saying? Or is he saying here, and to maybe try to stop the seasons of life is completely foolish? You'll never be able to do it. There are certain things that are totally out of your control. Is that what he's saying?
I think so. Excuse me. I think he is. He's saying there is a time, there's a season for every activity. Recognize what the season is, maybe,
Right.
And maybe it's something that you just let happen, or maybe it's the season for you to get up and do something because it's the season for that.
I guess I've always read this as life is going to ebb and flow. And it's not necessarily under our control.
Right.
And that we just need to, I'm throwing this part in there from me. We need to just trust God no matter what season we're in.
Yeah.
Whether it's the good, the bad, or the ugly, he's got a reason, and we need to give it to him.
Yeah. Right.
It's sort of vague prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Isn't this? This is in this kind of way we like to think we prepare our kids or other people to say, things are just going to happen. here's what you can do this, you can do this, but things are just going to happen. And and to sugarcoat it otherwise is doing everybody a disservice. If you try and tell somebody it's going to be perfect once you become a believer, or your struggles are over. Well, no, they aren't. So yeah, I think he's saying there's going to be a time when it's just going to happen, or you're going to be called to make it happen, to bring it about.
So what happens in a society that says you can turn back time, you can remain young, everything you do needs to be about staying, keep hanging on to the old part of your life, the stuff that maybe has already happened or is about ready to end? What happens there? Who never really contemplates eternity, who never really contemplates what's happening next. What do you think about that, teacher?
I want to see what he says over here. No, that's a great question. I mean, part of what Jesus was about, I think. Again, he it was a whole new thing. Everybody had to think a whole new way when the Messiah came. And there were people who embraced it and people who fought against it. What happened to the people who fought against it? We're not, but the people who embraced it, what do they get? What do they have now? They have eternal life. So, and again, is this not really, to me, this is the way to live your life, to be prepared to make changes as necessary, to not try and, there are things you want to hold on. There are traditions, there's whatever that you want to hold on to if need be, but if need be, don't you need to be prepared to make some changes, to make things better?
I think right now, for Nancy and I, what's relevant is there's a time to die. We have parents that are in that final stage, and they're dealing with their immortality.
Right.
So helping them, their mortality. I'm sorry. And so, helping them through that without, saying you need to die. Helping them understand what's going on in their lives and working with them and being there for them, and going to doctor appointments with them, and just spending time with them, and seeing how they're dealing with it themselves, psychologically and physically. But that's one of the things I don't think our society likes to think about dying, and so that's why they avoid it. That's why they're always trying to rerun our life, and basically saying you don't have to look old, you don't have to feel old. I'm 61 years old, I feel old.
My mom and I talk about that all the time, because like my mom, her first cousin and I were very direct about that. But we talk about the fact that we believe that it's because we believe in God, and we believe that there's life after death. We know that there's an end on earth, and we're not scared of what comes after. Right. And so people outside of our family think that we're very bizarre, because we're just too, I don't know. I don't understand that. Like, my dad has an incredible fear around it. He emails me every time some remote third person died that I might have known when I was 6 as a passerby in church, or, he can't handle the thought of any of it. And I want to say, I don't think so. And so I want to say, I want to have that conversation with him, but, I don't know.
It's what we live our life for. It's one of the things, my mom, in her last week of life, we had lots of good conversations, and many of the questions she has, what if all this,
Isn't real.
What if that isn't real, but it wasn't true? And I said, well, Mom, you followed Jesus since you were a little girl, and that's not the way it is. You know what's in the heart. You know what's true. You know that heaven waits for you. And I just had to remind her a little bit. And she got through that time. God gave her insurance the night before she died. But it was just one of those stages that I think we'll all go through at some point. And will we question whether or not it's all real? And we question whether or not, you know, God had
Yeah.
the ultimate plan for our life. Is there somewhere we, you know, because those of you that have lost both your parents, or have lost your parents, or one of your parents, you know, you all understand, you know, what they went through when they died. Some of them were in their mind, some of them were not in their right mind, some of them, you know, were healthier than others, and some were so sick that it was a blessing that they died. But it's just, that's just, I think a reality for Christians is that we should be looking forward to being with Jesus and not be afraid of dying. Now, when I'm dying, you can all remind me of that.
You won't remember you said it. but we'll-
Might not. I don't think I want to say yes.
I think it's important that we understand time. If you're looking at a timeline of infinity that goes on and on forever, and you look at our life, it's not even a dot on that timeline.
Right.
And the Bible says that it's the wise man that redeems the time, for the days are evil. So I think we really have to, you know, be concerned with that. And as far as what you were saying about not recognizing eternity or not looking ahead, that's very foolish. You know, anyone that reads the Bible, I mean, that tells you that. It's just, I don't know, it's, you have to reflect on the brevity of time and look at the timeline of eternity, because that's just, like I said, it's not even a blip on
Yeah.
that number
Right.
line.
Right.
It's not even a blip on it.
What was that scripture
And I-
you quoted about redeeming time?
Redeeming the time, for the days are evil. I think maybe Ephesians, I think it is, I'm not sure
Right.
of the exact, but redeeming the time, for the days are evil. And I think anybody that doesn't look, you know, ahead and it's kind of an epiphany moment, I think, for everybody that thinks about that. But anybody that's like just living in the moment and not recognizing how brief our lifespan is, just living in the moment, not looking forward, they're missing out.
Yeah.
And I know, like my mom one time, when I was a brand new Christian and I was excited, and you know, you go out and you shout it to everybody and you're on fire and all that. And she said, Miranda, if God wanted to speak to me, he would speak to me. And I said, no, Mom, you don't understand. You have to pursue God. That's not a commandment, but you know, you need to pursue God to get what you can get from God. You can't just sit there and be stagnant and say, let it happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So.
Good. So,
John, I have something.
yes,
There's a lot of things that are in here that it's a time for.
yeah,
And as I'm reading it, I don't think any of these things that are listed are sinful. If I say, the Bible wouldn't tell us things that, you know, it's a time to murder.
it's time to sin, yeah.
It's a time to
yeah.
get divorced. It's a time to do things that
Yeah.
are sinful. But yet there are things like killing and not embracing and hate. There are things that we should be hating or killing, and it's not necessarily sinful. And it's
Right.
that evil part, right?
Right,
So it's just, it was just, as I was reading through some of these things, like, some of these things are good and some of these things are bad, and yet maybe they're still not sinful, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they are.
well, that's a great comment you're making, that
It's a question
hate,
more than a comment.
is hate necessarily bad if depends on what it's context, right?
Right. It
What are you
depends on
hating?
context.
What are you hating? What are you fighting against?
What are you killing?
What are you killing? Right, it just says kill, it doesn't say what we're killing. Yeah,
Because
well.
you have to take this whole passage in the context of the greater Bible. Because if you just try to look at, it's like so many other scriptures, if you just try to look at that one scripture, you can turn it whatever way fits your argument.
Yeah.
But in the context of other quotes and other chapters that you study, then suddenly you're like, oh yeah, this, you can consider each of these actions in a different light.
Right, yeah.
Well, with the whole killing thing, because I think that seems so shocking to us in some ways, because, you know, thou shalt not kill, and then you see kill, there's a time to kill. But is it possible that that's like, God led his people into war sometimes?
There's a time for war.
Yeah. And so, I mean, could that be what the reference is to?
Well,
Because King David led a lot of men into war. Solomon didn't. It was in a time of peace, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe that's part of his thinking is that there was a time for Israel to be at war and a time.
It
I
could,
don't know.
yeah. Or is it just in the sense of, is this passive? Are we being told to be passive? And wars just happen. Wars there have always been wars, whether we've sought them out or not. Or are there times when Israel is called to go to war? Maybe it's a little bit of both here. Again, it just depends on the context.
He's just agreeing with everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
I keep thinking here that maybe what this passage is about is to trust God and to recognizing when these times are appropriate. But
Yeah.
sometimes we don't. We don't, I guess, we think it within ourselves instead of recognizing what God's trying to tell us to do.
right. And I would agree with that. That again, give us the discernment to say what time it's time for what right now.
Right.
It's time for this. It's not time for that. And that's hard to do sometimes,
Right.
to understand what we're being called to do or what we're being called to allow to happen, or however you want to phrase it. Yeah, that's good. Randy, you had,
I had a negative comment just a minute ago.
okay.
Kill bacteria,
Yes.
kill the fish to bring them in the nets.
Yeah.
That's killing.
Well, it's like, it's in the context of like to kill and to heal. So, we have a lot of medical people in here. So it's like, to heal something physical, you have to get rid of the bad to heal. But it's the same thing with your heart. If you're harboring ill feelings toward yourself or toward God, it's like you have to kill that. You have to get rid of that and remove it from your life in order to be healed, even spiritually too, other than just physically too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
good point.
Wow.
I think Kevin had something to say.
Well, it was kind of on the back of what Dave was saying. So should our prayers as Christians, rather than we're faced with a situation and we think we know what season of life we're in and we react to that, should we back up and say, okay, Lord, what season are we dealing with here? Is it a time to kill or is it a time to heal? Is it a time for me to go to war? Or is it a time for me to seek peace? Should we not back up and ask God exactly where are we right now? And how do you want me to react? Because it looks like there's a time for everything and I'm not sure I know what time it is.
Right. And yeah, I agree with that too. Part of, I think what I'm after here maybe is to understand there's times for everything, but yeah, what time is it right now for me,
Right.
for my family, for whoever?
Otherwise, I think we're going to get mixed up and we're going to just react to things and we're going to react out of our emotions, which usually lead us in the wrong direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Move on or we'll be here all day.
There'll be a time to.
There'll
end
be a
your
time to
class.
end this class.
The time to teach.
The time for lunch, yeah, All right, another thing I want to look at, and this gets back to the language, the original Hebrew words used for some of this. Again, verse 9, what does the worker gain from his toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on man. That just, it's toil, it's a burden. It's just, life is just terrible. It's just hard work. But if you look at verse 9 in the original Hebrew, the NIV says, what does the worker gain from his toil? The Hebrew word for toil actually means labor, which to me, it's not toil unless if you enjoy what you're doing, if you're working at something, if you're doing something, you're laboring, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. That it's a positive thing. This is is this not what, we're all kind of called to do? You got to work at something. You need to be doing something, not just sitting around doing nothing. And in verse 10, I have seen the burden God has laid on men. The original Hebrew for burden, instead of burden, it means task. So it's not, why they chose burden for the NIV translation there. I don't know why they translate things the way they do, but don't think of it as a burden. You've got a task. Here's the next thing you've got to do. So it's not necessarily you're doomed to a life of burdensome toil. It says, here's things that it's time for you to do these things. Here's your next task. Should you choose to accept it?
That's not a culturally popular topic now.
Well, yeah,
Just throwing it out there.
right. No, you're right.
We often feel like we're part of a different generation because we like to work. We want to teach our kids like work
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
play later. And, that's not what they see in the wider world.
Right.
Oh, take time for yourself. Just relax. Do this. So
Yeah.
I don't think a toil is a burden either.
Okay. And then, and verse 13, that everyone may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all his toil. This is the gift of God. Well, again, toil there, the original, the Hebrew is labor again. Eat and drink, and be satisfied with whatever it is you're working at. It's not that it's a heavy burden. It's just this is what you do, so find satisfaction in that. Because, and this all gets back to me, a phrase Solomon uses a lot of times throughout this is, things under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. This and that under the sun. And so to me, he draws a real distinction between things under the sun, which to me, he's saying anything having to do with the natural world, with just your life as you live it here on earth. That's a very limited way to look at things. Look at things beyond what's under the sun, the eternal things, the things that are the important things in life. That I'm more worried about things that aren't under the sun. I'm worried about eternity. I'm worried about truth. I'm worried about, I'm worried about all these things beyond what's going on under the sun. It's a way to focus as like Miranda just kind of, let's look at eternity. Let's not look at our little tiny dot on the scale of time. Let's not just look at what's going on under the sun, because that's a small, finite part of what's going on around us. And then in verse 11, he's made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. The contemporary English version, I think, has a nice translation of that, the second part of that verse. He has set questions about the past and future in the human heart, which, one of the things that distinguishes us from the animals, of course, is our ability to remember the past, to think about the future, to plan, to remember all these things that, and this gets back again to things that aren't under the sun. Eternity is a whole nother thing other than what's under the sun. So Solomon is recognizing we have eternity. We worry about these things. We think about these things. We say, what's my place in eternity? Where am I in the big scheme of things? And then the verse finishes, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end, which I want to, and this to me echoes really well, ties in with a little segment from Job, the book of Job, because it kind of says the same thing. Job chapter 38. For 38, 1 through 21, I'll just read it. The Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. He said, Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness, when I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place, when I said, this far you may come and no farther, here is where your proud waves halt. Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place, that it might take the earth by the edges and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. The wicked are denied their light and their upraised arm is broken. Have you journeyed to the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been shown to you? Have you seen the gates of the deepest darkness? Have you comprehended the vast expanses of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. Yeah, that's a longer way of saying, he has said,
Nothing.
I'm sorry?
It's a long way of saying, you know nothing.
Yeah, who are you? I'm God, who are you? But again, I put that in it because it's a good thing to remember, and again, this is back to, they cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end, despite having eternity in our hearts. We certainly would like to understand maybe more than we do, but is Solomon kind of saying, well, at some point, don't you just have to say, just accept? You're searching, you're asking will only get you so far because you're just not going to understand it all. So maybe you don't want to go too far down that road. And then in verse 13, that everyone may eat and drink and find verse 12. I know there is nothing better for men than to be happy and do good while they live. And the do good there is kind of another interesting way to look at this. The original Hebrew, the word means rejoice. So don't just do a good job at whatever it is you're doing. It says rejoice while you live. There's nothing better to be happy and rejoice while they live. Good also there. Happy refers to rejoice. Rejoice and do good. And to do good is the same word used in Genesis, chapter 1. I know where that is. Chapter 1, verse 4 is one of many examples. God saw that the light was good. So good here doesn't mean just be a good person. It goes further than that. It's about to do good, to have a characteristic about you that you're striving to do good, that you're striving to be good, that it's not just behaving yourself, that there's integrity. Yeah, you could use all kinds of adjectives in there. What kind of character do you have? What kind of light do you bring to other people? Are you exhibiting this goodness, this kind of light throughout your life?
Are we talking about righteousness? Are we talking about God's rightness?
Yeah, you could say that, I think.
When you're talking about his good, he looked at something he created, he said, that's good.
Yeah.
It's righteous.
And obedience and worship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All these things. So there's, try to do something other than just behave yourself and do what you're supposed to do. And again, we're back to the eternal things beyond what you are physically. What are you exhibiting? What are you showing of your faith? How does God shine through you? Is the goodness of God showing through how you're living your life? This goes beyond just the here and the now. Are you doing good things? Are you showing what a good life is? And then let's see. And then verse 18, and here we're back to, again, people maybe, when we talked about people not wanting to face up to the reality of the end of life. Verse 18, I also thought, as for men, God tests them so they may see that they are like the animals. Man's fate is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so does the other. All have the same breath. Man has no advantage over the animal. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place. All come from dust, and to dust all return. Well, that can be pretty depressing if you just look at it out at a certain level. Boy, that's just great. Good stuff, man. But if you tie that with being good, if you do good, if you do your address, if you tackle whatever your tasks are, maybe one of our tasks is to be good, to show good. Then physically, we're the same as the animals. That, you just can't get around that. That's just the way it is. But again, looking beyond what's under the sun, we have eternity. That's the difference. So Solomon is just trying to get us all to face up to reality. Is he not? It's just, this is what's going to happen. So you may not like it, but that's what's going to happen. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place.
Can I say?
Yeah.
The Amplified in verse 18 says that they may see that by themselves under the sun without God, they are but like beasts. So I think it's making the distinction that if you don't have God, you're just like the beasts.
Right.
You're gonna, but if you have God, that's a whole different.
Right. Then, if you have, then your death is the start
Exactly.
of your real life, as some people like to characterize it. Heather?
I've said this before, but I just keep feeling like Ecclesiastes is just, there is a God and it's not me. And I think, if it's Solomon who's the author and attempts to understand, attempts to embrace, have more meaning than he's ever, more control than he's ever going to be able to have. We all get to that point, and if we're growing spiritually in our walk with the Lord, that we kind of say, we have to step back and say, I'm not in control. I can't control this, and I can't control this, and I keep giving it to him and keep in prayer and keep, issues in our lives, relationships a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard, but that just is something that I think about a lot. And it's also not all about us, which is also hard in our culture. We want to think it's all about us, or culture says it is.
John.
Yeah.
John. I was just thinking the very same thing, but just like we looked at these contrasts in these early verses of
Mhm.
chapter 3, it's not about me, but it is about me. Because as much as we are just a speck in time, Jesus wants a personal relationship with each one of us. And
Right.
nobody can do that for me but me, but
Yeah.
he and me.
Right.
My family, my friends can't pray me to him. That's about me. And he cares about every detail of my life. So that's what's so crazy about God, is all of these opposites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Good. All right, I want to move ahead to chapter 4. Verse 1. Again, I looked and saw the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. And I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. But better than both is he who has not yet been born. Which is just kind of to us, is that just kind of a weird thing to say? How do we make sense of that? Better than both is he who has not yet been born, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. And so, but so what? What good does that do us to read that? Well, we're here, aren't we? I mean, we see the evil. We see we see the good. We see the evil. Would it really be better than both to have not been born? I don't know. This phrase just, I've never been sure what to make of it.
Well, don't you think though that whenever you said it earlier, whenever he starts in this whole under the sun thing, he is thinking like a man without a God. He's just looking at life from, it happens every day. The sun goes up, the sun comes down. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Here's this season, here's that season. And I really don't have, my toil is meaningless. I got all this money. It's going to go to one of my kids. They're going to waste it. I know they're going to waste it.
Yeah.
And so he's got this kind of defeatist attitude because whenever he starts talking about things under the sun, it seems like he is talking about man without God.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at my life, and it doesn't matter whether I'm wise or foolish. Same fate comes to us all. Doesn't matter whether I'm rich or I'm poor. It'd be better if I weren't born than to be born and face evil, And so it's just, there's a real defeatist attitude that comes out in him whenever he starts talking about living under the sun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's just hope chapter 5 brings a little more encouragement.
You gotta wait a while.
Well, I think it ties in, John, with the curse that God put on Adam and Eve. It comes right back to these words. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat of it all the days of your life. This is the life from that point on. Be aware of that.
Right.
And that's there's a time for everything, and the earth is dust to dust, and it was all predicated on that.
And that's a great point. Okay, so let me throw this back to you. Okay, so that's the curse we received from God. But did that not also have a blessing? We're reading here
Oh yeah.
that's the good thing in your life is to do whatever your task is. Learn to make that the good part of your life.
That's right.
Yeah, you're okay. So this is what I have to do. But has God also provided that a way for me to accept that that's a fulfilling life for me? That's part of a fulfilling life.
But the reality is that we're all going to toil as
Yeah,
humans.
yeah.
And that's why. And when it all happened, and so looking back on it, yes, it's sort of like, and I don't know the right words, but you've got the good and the bad. Have your eyes wide open. This is the way it's supposed to be, and make the best of it.
Yeah.
And here's why you should make the best of it, because you'll be able to rejoice in God if you understand salvation.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it quite right, but
It's how you make the best of it.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's our responsibility to make the best of it.
Yeah.
And to honor him. You won't understand everything. You won't, we're
Right.
fathomless, but he's given us enough picture within our realm of understanding to understand salvation and to understand our small portion of life, how we fit in. We're inconsequential as individuals. Understand that, but you can still make an impact with your neighbors and to God,
Mhm.
and live a happy life.
You can make an impact in those non-physical, eternal things
Right.
that exhibit the good
Yeah.
in your life. You can show the good to other people. Yeah, good. That's nice. Yeah,
When Kevin said that Solomon kind of had a defeatist attitude, I mean, honestly, when I read some of this, it's like, this is depressing, you know? And I kind of have to wonder when exactly in his life did Solomon write this? Because remember, he was the wisest man on earth.
yeah.
And is it as he was working through this wisdom that he wrote this? Because I kind of find it hard to believe he would have written it after at the end, although I could be wrong.
My understanding, and that doesn't mean anything, is that he wrote it fairly late in life.
Oh,
And
okay.
if somebody knows things differently, then
Maybe he
Let me
was
know.
just trying to provoke discussion among us.
Maybe.
You know, and that's a good. You know, I think. I don't know. What do I think? Yeah, it is. It is can be depressing. That's why I said at the start. I said I want to try and look at this so in a way that it doesn't seem so depressing, and that. I mean, we all need to. I think we all need to acknowledge at some point in our lives that our physical life. Yeah, there's work. There's terrible things happen. Some good things happen, but at some point, it always ends. It always ends. But that we accept, our lot in life, our physical existence. We have to accept that. But it doesn't stop there. And maybe that's part of why he always talking about things that are happening under the sun, but he talks about other things that are beyond the scope of that. That's what we really focus on.
Maybe
So
he wrote that as contrasting so we could see that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think the start of chapter 3, time to be born. That's the whole pattern he set up here. There's good, there's bad, and it's just it all happens at one point or another. And who knows where you are in your life at that moment. You could be in a good phase, you could be in a bad phase, but it happens to all of us. He sets up that contrast because my life certainly is a contrast of good and bad. Does anybody else feel that way?
Yeah, your life is.
My life is. I knew somebody was going to say that. Jeff?
Not to have 700 wives. 300 comments.
Yeah,
Don't just come into it.
don't go there. Yeah,
Spoiler alert.
yeah. All right, I want to get chapter 4, verse 7. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asks, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. This kind of, I connected with this verse for some reason. And again, the contemporary English version I like, because the way the NIV says, the man is asking himself, for whom am I toiling? The CEV says, once again, I saw nothing on earth make sense. For example, some people don't have friends or family, but they are never satisfied with what they own, and they never stop working to get more. They should ask themselves, why am I always working to have more? Who will get what I leave behind? What a senseless and miserable life. That to me says it a little more clearly. Maybe we should all ask ourselves a little more often. What am I working for? Who am I working for? What am I working for? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Maybe I need to examine my priorities a little bit and make sure I'm working for the right reasons, or working to the right end. I kind of liked the CEV there. And then verse 9, 2 are better than one because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up, but pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. And that you can take, I think, several ways. You can talk about friends or acquaintances, people working together can make work lighter. You can talk, say he's talking about a marriage here, where two together as one, keeping each other warm, helping each other. And then he throws in at the end of verse 12, a cord of 3 strands. What's this third strand? Where'd that come from? He was talking about 2 together.
Right.
God.
Right.
Yeah, and that was the general consensus among all the commentators. That he's probably saying with God, since he doesn't know Jesus, he says, with God, you've had that third strand that just makes it that much stronger. A few other commentators said, well, he's talking about a family, a marriage, and when they have kids can be that third strand as well. That makes the family that much stronger. Either one, whichever you prefer, I guess. And we're out of time. And then the end of the chapter, he gets into wise youths, foolish kings. And he ends the chapter with, those who came later were not pleased with the successor. This too is meaningless. And there are all kinds of examples of empires and kingdoms throughout history that they were the greatest power on earth, and they've all disappeared, and a lot of them we've never even heard of. Name any number of them. Tamerlane and Genghis Khan and the empires in Africa that nobody ever. And Solomon's right in liner says it's all meaningless. So now I did want to put a painting in here, but there were no paintings of Ecclesiastes chapter 3 that were any good. They were all pictures of flowers and everything is beautiful in its time. Yeah, that was terrible. So I did put a poem in here from Ozymandias, which brings, and it came to my mind talking about where Psalmist talking about everything is meaningless. On the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. I love that poem. So that's what I got.
Amen.
Is it all just meaningless, or once we look beyond what's under the sun, it starts to have meaning, I think, is what we're called to do. Anybody have anything? If not, we'll have a word of prayer. Dear God, thank you for your word. Help us to understand what time it is in our lives. Is it time for this? Is it time for that? Help us to understand and to do our part. Be with us this week. Keep us all safe. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all.
Well, that was pretty.
Sorry.